I would like to introduce some people who are here with us. Mr. Ganesh Ture Rao, National In Charge Think India. Mr. Rahul Chaudhary, National Co-Convener Think India. I request Mr. Shyam Diwan and Mr. Sanjay Ghosh to please come on the stage and acquire the seat. Friends, law is not only about the X and the Y laws, but it involves a glimpse of the experience of learned ones who preside the bench and who pleads in the court of law. Precedents are a very important part of law, and the year 2017 has observed some landmark cases which has played historical role in shaping some important areas of law and policy. Today, we will be having sessions on landmark cases which includes right to privacy, triple talaq, river as a living entity, seeking vote in the name of religion and caste, and marital rape. Friends, the first session is on the topic right to privacy, and we have on panel respected Mr. Shyam Diwan, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, and respected Sanjay Ghosh, Advocate, Delhi High Court. Mr. Shyam Diwan is a senior advocate who practices before the Supreme Court of India. He appears for Citizens Against the State in the challenge to the Aadhaar Act and the Aadhaar program. The Constitution Bench judgment of 9 judges upholding the fundamental right to privacy was rendered in an offshoot of the Aadhaar case, which is itself pending before the Supreme Court. Mr. Sanjay Ghosh is a graduate from the National Law School of India, Bangalore, in 1996. He has been practicing as a lawyer in Delhi. He is currently the Standing Counsel of the Delhi High Court and the Additional Standing Counsel for the Delhi government. He has worked with many women rights NGOs and has represented many workmen and unions in labor cases. Now, I request respected Mr. Shyam Diwan to come on the dais and address the gathering.
Thanks very much, Raghav, and a very good morning to each one of you. Welcome to Delhi for those of you who've traveled from afar. And well, I think the weather's quite nice. I don't know about the quality of the air, though. I will first disclose my bias and then address you on the privacy judgment, which was rendered, as was mentioned, on the 24th of August last year. My bias is in the sense that, as was mentioned by Raghav, I appear in a batch of petitions and in the Aadhaar case. And the challenge there is first to something called the Aadhaar program. The Aadhaar program, as you know, collects biometrics, issues cards, but it's much wider than just that. The second is there's a statute which was introduced in 2016 called the Aadhaar Act, and there's a set of petitions which challenges the Aadhaar Act. So the position or the viewpoint that I canvass is that this act itself is unconstitutional. And the third issue which arises, or the third set of issues which arises in this batch of cases, is also aspects regarding who owns your body. The Attorney General for India, in an earlier case called Binoy Vishwam, which concerned linking of Aadhaar to the PAN card, made a submission that there is no absolute control which each one of you has over his or her body. And that's, an absolutely terrifying state of affairs when your Attorney General for India makes that submission and says that, therefore, as far as your fingerprints and your iris are concerned, we, the state, can compel you to part with that. So there is a set of reliefs which are sought in this petition or in this batch of petitions, which are also with regard to a declaration that it is citizens of India who have control over their own bodies. And then there's an extension of that. And because we live in a digital world, and we leave digital signatures and marks and trails all over, what is the control and what's the extent of the control which we have with regards to this digital world. So there are reliefs with regards to that at all. As you can imagine, in almost any case of this type, there is a contest. And our system, for those of you who are not law students, is based on what we call an adversarial system. And the theory behind the adversarial system is that you have two sides, and each side canvasses his or her position to the best of his or her ability. And you have then a neutral arbiter who is the judge, and this clash of ideas is finally refined and adjudicated by the judge. Now, the adversarial system has been established across many societies across the world as being a fair system in trying to reach a good resolution. The issue, of course, which arises is that these cases arise not in an adversarial context alone, but in something called public interest litigations. And public interest litigations are supposed to be, in theory, more congenial because everyone is supposed to be on the same side. That is, to advance the public interest. As it happens in this batch of cases, there is a very, very severe contest between the parties. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that the manner in which the Aadhaar case, and why did we get a judgment on privacy? Perhaps some of you, I'm sure all of you are aware of what the judgment eventually held, but how did it travel up to 9 judges? So I thought I'll give you a little perspective on that. So it was mentioned by Raghav, it was an offshoot of the Aadhaar case, and basically what the petitioners in Aadhaar are saying is that, look, number one, each one of us has control of his or her own body, and we can therefore decide. You can't coerce us into parting with aspects like biometrics. You can't coerce us with storing it in areas like centralized data banks. You can't compel us to keep leaving our fingerprints and our trails where you tell us, because it's very, very harmful. Because today, as you're seeing, as the matter unfolds and as society unfolds, you're required to give your Aadhaar, subject to the result of this petition, for example, for a bank account. You're required to give it for your cell phone. You may be required to give it for travel documents. You're required to give it for exams. You're required to give it for scholarships. You're required to give it for essential entitlements. So you're entitled to food. A child is entitled to food, for example. We have a Food Security Act. We have a constitutional right. We have a constitution under which you have social rights which are guaranteed to the people of India, apart from political rights. Can the government say that, look, maybe you have this right, but unless you part with your fingerprints, and I can control as to not control, but I have dominion over your fingerprints, I will not allow you to exercise these rights. So this is something which, all of you who are attending here in Think India have to think about very, very seriously. Can it be made conditional? Constitutional rights, statutory rights. The other very troubling aspect is that whenever you have an authentication in terms of, for Aadhaar, which is the original rollout which they had in a pilot project which they did in Mysore, was for distribution of LPG. And I don't want to bore you with the details, but they found that authentication, they were giving LPG cylinders only for authentication of fingerprints in Mysore, and they found that it was working only 67% of the time. So you can imagine. So what happens to the remaining 33 users? They don't get a cylinder because the technology doesn't work. How is it to operate? And then they backed off as far as LPG is concerned, because that would have been a huge, enormous uprising amongst middle class if you deny them that. But then they concentrated on PDS, and you're reading in the newspapers as to how across the country, at least in 2 or 3 states, there are reports of starvation deaths which are taking place. So can you have a situation like this where your right to live is being made conditional by the state? The other aspect as to what led to this privacy judgment was that our contention also was that because you're authenticating, the device which is used has either some of them have GPS now. So with GPS plus authentication, the state can theoretically track your movements all across. And you can imagine that once this Aadhaar gets embedded, there will be a 24/7 virtually profile which the state will be able to track you with. So it's a complete, we are moved first. When we came in the petition, the complaint was it's a surveillance state. Now what we are seeing is it's a surveillance society. And when the state knows so much about you, it has an enormous chilling impact. So obviously, one of the dimensions, one of the grounds insofar as Aadhaar is concerned and the challenge is concerned was that this is an invasion of privacy, and we had about 3 decades of judgments which had recognized in the Supreme Court had recognized different dimensions and aspects of the fundamental right to privacy. But the government didn't want the case to be heard. And so they employed a series of ploys, and one of the interesting ploys which they employed was that they reached out to a judgment of 8 judges of the Supreme Court of India, which was rendered by a judgment by the title of MP Sharma, and another one by 6 judges rendered by, in the name of Kharak Singh. And these are judgments of considerable vintage in the 1950s and 60s. And at this particular point of time, when the Constitution was very young, typically our judges would look to US precedents, because the United States had a Bill of Rights, to guide the laying down of jurisprudence. But the Constitution in the Indian context is regarded as a document written for the ages, and therefore it's a dynamic document subject to interpretation which changes from time to time. That's the Indian philosophy in terms of reading the Constitution and interpreting the Constitution. In the United States, you have a current theme or approach which is called the originalist approach, where they say, for example, that no, what did the original Constitution makers mean by a particular word, and that is the construction which we should give to it. We in India do not follow that. So we have a dynamic approach to this, and we thought we were on very secure grounds when we felt that, look, we've got about 30 years and 40 judgments of the Supreme Court of India which had said that there is a right to privacy in different aspects. So we thought we were very comfortable, but no, the government of India said nothing doing. There is no fundamental right to privacy at all. It's not protected under Part 3 of the Constitution. 8 judges said so in MP Sharma. 6 judges probably said so in Kharak Singh. So therefore, you, sitting in a panel of 3 judges, cannot decide. So the case therefore went first to 5 judges. Then there was again an effort which was made, because there is a principle that from 5 you can go to 7 and not directly to 9. So this was again a ploy, because essentially the way I look at it, the government doesn't want the case to be heard. And they've succeeded to a great extent, because the case was originally filed in 2012, there was a hearing in 2013, 14, etc. In 15 it was being heard finally, and now we're in 2018, and the final hearing is now listed for the 17th of January. So they've been very successful in spreading the entire program, in ensuring that there is no hearing and no contest in court. And in that sense, this was a very successful legal ploy. But I'll just look at it, so that's how privacy went up before 9 judges. Then, of course, there were 2 issues which were raised over there before 9 judges. First, there was this contest where the government said that you have no fundamental right to privacy. Now, what's the importance of this? The importance of putting privacy in the fundamental rights chapter is that under our constitutional scheme, if there is a fundamental right, then you cannot have a law which transgresses or violates a fundamental rights. That's the scheme. Our courts are constitutionally empowered to strike down a law or to strike down a provision under their powers of judicial review where a provision of law conflicts with a fundamental right. That's the principle. If you have no fundamental right to privacy, then the state can argue there is no fundamental right, and therefore you may challenge your Aadhaar Act and Aadhaar program on other provisions, but you cannot challenge it as a violation as far as privacy is concerned. You may have certain other fundamental rights, like we have a right to equality under Article 14, we have a right to life under Article 21. So this was the contest which reached the 9 learned judges of the court, and they were called upon to decide. And I should share something, because I really, as a lawyer, you just don't know what is going to happen in court. That's part of the strength of the system. There is no certainty because you have independent judges who decide your cases. And I remember there was a very strong element of self-doubt that I had, that I went through. And the question I was asking myself before the judgment was rendered was this worthwhile? Worthwhile in what sense? Worthwhile in the sense that, look, for 40 years, we in India have assumed we've had a right to privacy. We've had so many judgments which have protected the right to privacy in different aspects, in aspects of, say, publication and free speech, in aspects with regard to medical records, in aspects with regard to people, can you be compelled to take, to part with, there's this whole business about tests for the purposes of knowing in criminal investigations. Can you be compelled to be a witness against yourself? And on several other dimensions as well, including surveillance, etc. And so the question I was asking myself was this really worth putting up before 9 judges? Because supposing 9 judges hold that we do not have a right to privacy, what then? Where does that leave 1 billion plus citizens of India? But eventually we had, when you take up a case like this, the Aadhaar matter, you're doing it for the public, you're not doing it for yourself. So when you take up a cause and are pursuing a public interest litigation such as this, you have to then look at it from a perspective that you are discharging a trust and therefore you put in your best effort. And eventually what the Supreme Court held was, and it held it 9-0. So in court, the dynamics which were playing out was very interesting. It was a bunch of citizens who were the original petitioners. Then there was an element of politics which had played out. Because as some of you might know, and some of you may recall, the Prime Minister had, when he was not the Prime Minister, strongly opposed Aadhaar. But then after he became Prime Minister, he's been persuaded that this is a very good program, etc. And so that the government and the department is now backing Aadhaar. So Congress, which was in administration at the center at the time when the Aadhaar program was initiated, not the Aadhaar Act, but the Aadhaar program, and they were taking credit for it initially, now suddenly find themselves in the opposition. So what you had was you had these independent citizens groups which were challenging which were upholding privacy, plus you had certain opposition-ruled states, which suddenly we found very surprisingly were on our side. For example, West Bengal and Karnataka, I think Kerala also. And then you had the union government, which obviously is trying to defend its act, but very unfortunately saying that citizens in India do not have a right to privacy, do not have a fundamental right to privacy, I'm sorry. And then you had a whole bunch of state governments also, which were politically aligned to the center, who were saying so. And then you had, of course, the UIDAI. And then you had wonder of wonders, at least from my personal point of view. You had even a citizens group which was saying, an NGO. I mean, you can have a difference of opinion on whether Aadhaar is good or bad in terms, but you don't expect a civil society group to be saying that, no, you do not have a fundamental right to privacy. But these are the kind of dynamics which play out in court. And it may come as a surprise to some of you that you have certain NGOs which will come to court and say, no, citizens do not have a right to privacy, and advance arguments to that. Anyway, I think we were very fortunate. We got a 9-0 judgment in our favor on the 24th of August 2017. And what it essentially said was that, look, since first and foremost it said that the right to privacy is an inalienable fundamental right. So that's very important. Second, it says, since it's in a fundamental right, it's in Part 3 of our Constitution, which is the part which sets out the fundamental right. Third, it said that it is certainly in Article 21, which is the right to life, but it is elsewhere as well in terms of Part 3 of the Constitution, because there are, freedoms which are guaranteed, for example, under Article 19. So it dwells in those as well. Then it has gone on further to say that if you want to impinge upon the right to privacy, you must, number one, have a law, because you cannot impinge on a fundamental right without a law. Second, the law has to have a well-defined purpose, which is in the public interest. And the third is that it has to be proportionate or reasonable. So these are now the tests which will be laid out not only for the Aadhaar Act, but to test future laws in terms of privacy. Now, what's the importance and significance of this judgment? The first importance and significance is, of course, in protecting privacy itself and placing it in part 3. But there's something more. When 9 judges of the Supreme Court of India speak, it happens very rarely. We essentially, by and large, our court sits in panels of 2 and 3 judges. Important constitutional matters are in panels of 5. This time they were compelled to sit in a panel of 9 because they overruled those old judgments of MP Sharma and Kharak Singh to the extent that they said, if they said it at all, that there is no fundamental right to privacy. So they had to sit in a panel of 9 to overrule a panel of 8 and 6. So the Supreme Court judgments in India also operate as laying down principles, and those principles are they set the groundwork for future jurisprudence and for future cases to be developed. So the principles are laid here. So this becomes really a great opportunity, I think, for the future in terms of privacy and how it's going to play out in the context of different laws. Aadhaar will be just one of them, which, as I indicated to you, the hearing will begin on 17th. But there's so many other aspects. And these aspects are likely to arise more intensely and more frequently. And why is that? And I'll just let you on to one thing, because I find that I've just about completed my time. So I'll just take a minute more. You see, the technology, as you recall Friedman's words, the world is flat. So all of a sudden, you're having a situation where technologies are being introduced globally at the same time. The second point is that you have a very fast-track system in the under the Indian system. We have a problem of delays, etc., in our courts, but we have a manner in which we can directly petition the Supreme Court of India. So in most systems, to approach the Supreme Court, there's a whole filtration process of 2, 3, 4 years, etc. In India, you can directly petition Article 32. The reason I'm mentioning this is, and cases of high priority in our system also can speed up the various levels all the way up to the Supreme Court very, very rapidly. So in the 50s, 60s, 1970s, etc., Indian courts had guidance from other courts, and principles are laid down in other jurisdictions across the world and would play with them and apply those to India. Now, all of a sudden, with the economy opening up, with technology being introduced worldwide simultaneously or more or less simultaneously, suddenly the Indian Supreme Court is not going to have the advantage of these guideposts and signposts from other jurisdictions. They're going to have to decide the cases themselves. And they're going to have to decide the contours of privacy and other such issues which arise with, rapid spread of the internet, different types of technologies, etc. And so they're going to have to really look inwards. They're going to have to think very hard. They're going to have to apply the privacy judgment and see where the direction which our society takes. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take questions after some.